Good morning, Lindi. We are ready to start.
Good morning, Elsabe, and good morning, Christine, and good morning to everybody else who has joined us this morning. If I'm sounding a bit like I've got a bit of extra bass in my voice this morning, please excuse me. I've been a bit ill this week, but I'm really, really excited for this webinar this morning. I am Lindi Botha. I'm going to be your host this morning. And I am a communication specialist at Target Communications, and I play various roles. I'm an agricultural journalist predominantly. Publications I write for include Farmers Weekly, Sunday Times, Financial Mail, and I also regularly host live panel discussions and do public speaking, which has become a particular passion of mine recently. So today we are going to explore influencing people and driving engagement in the workplace. I know everybody of us would have who are in the communications industry have experienced those moments where we feel like our messages are just not getting through to our audiences, and often it's just because audiences have become disengaged and people in the workplace have become disengaged. So today we're going to unpack exactly what that disengagement looks like so that we can recognize it when we see it. And then Christine and Elsabe are going to give us some valuable advice on how to counter disengagement. So just a few housekeeping rules before we do start. We do have a Q&A function, so please feel free to ask your questions there. We want this to be as impactful as possible. So if we can get your feedback and any questions that you have in your mind, something that we perhaps haven't touched on, or a particular problem you are facing, please put that down in the Q&A session, and then we will deal with those questions as we go along. The session is also being recorded for those who can't make it now, or perhaps that won't be able to sit in for the full session, or perhaps want to refer back to it later. And then just as an added bonus after the session today, we'll also send out the think, feel, and do template and a summary of the discussion points for all the registered participants. And we really value your feedback. So let us know how you're feeling about this, how things are going. We're going to send you a short survey after this today, and then that will also help us to improve the service that we are offering to you and potential future webinars that we will be handling. So now let me introduce our two exceptional communication professionals who are going to give us this valuable advice this morning. And that is Elsabe Coetzee and Christine Breet, who have both been monumental figures in the communication space, in South Africa and internationally. Elsabe Coetzee of CommStrat Communication and Ideation is a high-performing, passionate leader in strategic communication. Her specialist creative solutions transform businesses from diverse industries such as healthcare, agriculture, finance, manufacturing, retail, mining, and even education in Africa and North Africa. Elsabe is a board member of the International Association for Business Communications Africa region, is also responsible for the monumental task of arranging the Call Awards. Welcome, Elsabe. Our second speaker is Christine Breet, who is the CEO of Christine Breet Communications. Christine specializes in delivering measurable solutions for communication challenges. And everybody in communications and marketing knows that measuring is always a big issue. And this is something that Christine excels at. It's not just ticking the boxes, it's actual measurable solutions. Christine refines strategies, manages change, builds communities, and provides impactful training that leaves a lasting impression. As the IABC Africa Director of Professional Development and a certified SCMP, Christine is dedicated to advancing the field of communication through continuous learning and professional growth. So please join me in welcoming Elsabe and Christine, two master communicators whose expertise and passion will inspire and move us today, and I very much hope will inspire and move your communication strategies going forward. So let's make sure we're all on the same page. We are speaking about influencing today and influencing people in a positive manner. We just do want to reiterate that that does not mean manipulation. It is important that we distinguish between positive influence and negative manipulation. Whereas the influence involves guiding and motivating employees transparently and ethically to align with the company's goals. Manipulation, on the other hand, involves deceit or coercion and often prioritizes the company's needs at the expense of the employee's well-being, which is, of course, what we don't want to do. So with this understanding, let's delve into how such positive influence can be a cornerstone of achieving business success and supporting fostering a supportive workplace environment. So let's get straight into it. Disengagement. We've got some interesting stats here just to show what a big issue disengagement has become. A recent report by Gallup shows that only 20% of employees globally are engaged in the workplace. And although this figure has risen in the last decade, progress has stalled since the onset of COVID-19, of having peaked in 2019 at 22%. But it has been flatlining since, and I'm sure that's something that everybody can actually tangibly feel as well. And there's a host of reasons for that, which we can get into, but we are going to focus more on the solutions today. So another report reveals that over 50% of the global workforce is disengaged, leading to an $8.8 trillion economic cost. Those of you who have seen disengagement can see firsthand what the effect is. You've got listless employees, those who are not really willing to go the extra mile, to try that harder, try a little bit harder to help everybody collectively reach the goals. So, Elsabe, what is the cause of this decline the decline in engagement in workforces currently? Elsabe, you're still on mute.
Hi, Lindi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thanks.
Okay. Lindi, this is an interesting question. One that I had a discussion with Danny of Solidarity earlier this week. And we chatted about what they're experiencing in terms of disengagement. And there definitely has been an impact, but particularly under the younger generation, of people who are no longer interested in a job if they can't work remotely. So our discussion today isn't basically centered around that principle, but in general. And I think we've all made the mistakes. So I'm not advocating the solutions from our high horse. I've been there as well. But generally, mistrust in leadership. There are reasons why your staff don't trust you. And a lack of communication, Christine, if you would agree with me, is probably one of the biggest reasons. When people don't know what's going on, then they simply just don't trust you. Another issue could be, or another issue definitely is if information doesn't flow. If information doesn't flow right from the top to the bottom, and again from the bottom upwards, then people have to rely on the grapevine, and they simply don't know where to get the right information. And often then you'll find that the line manager becomes part of the gossip because he or she is also not informed. And then somebody hears from a higher source or somebody with more power, and then they believe that the line manager is a liar or deceiving them or basically just not in the know. So mistrust is a massive problem. Also, often the manager doesn't know that his employees don't trust him. In South Africa, we have to be extremely careful how we express ourselves. We have such a diverse employee base. And we have to realize that on top of male, female, gender, age, we still have a hugely diverse social diversity. And we have to consider as leaders, there might be a chance that my staff are not hearing me, that I think that they understand me, but they actually don't. And especially in amongst many of the younger generation, you'll find that employees might not know how to relate to you as the line manager, and they say, yes, no problem, sure, no problem. Meanwhile, they don't really understand. And so that's an issue. So I've mentioned communication gaps. And then something else that has quite a bearing is lack of recognition. If I don't recognize your skill as important, then you don't know, if you don't know how you are doing, am I doing okay? Is my contribution making a difference? Then there's uncertainty with me. And if you don't recognize my skill and allay my fears in terms of validate what I'm adding, then I will become perhaps or most likely withdrawn because I'm uncertain. I don't know, Christine, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't. But what I want to add is to say that there are tools available that we can actually measure this with. And I think people shy away because they think it is costly. But for example, you have to do a tone, flow, and a trust audit,
Trust.
Elsabe, because
Yes,
that's the only way that you can see where in your hierarchy are those blocks and how you can actually fix it. Something like a communication audit not only audits what actual channels you have, but it also audits what is the tone of your message, what is
exactly,
the
exactly.
content, because all of that links back to communication and ultimately to disengagement.
You know, Christine,
And sorry, Elsabe, sorry, and
mm,
just one more thing that I want to add. So what we find in change communication quite a lot is when people do not trust the message, then they start trusting or not trusting the actual messenger.
messenger,
So it's a
absolutely.
two-way thing that you have to manage as a communicator to make sure that the right message gets out there so that that trust between staff and manager, as an example, is cohesive and continues.
Absolutely. Lindy, you know me quite well as a passionate person. Um, I think my own example is very telling. So I tend to be very passionate about certain things, particularly communication. And I've had the incident where people think when I become passionate and I raise my voice and I'm like in my zone, some people think I'm actually shouting at them, or some people interpret it as reprimanding. And meanwhile, I believe, oh gosh, I am in the zone and I'm on a roll and everybody's with me. So, just from my very own personal lesson that I'd like to share, and it's something that I'm very aware of now, even, is that tone of voice is incredibly important. So if people think that I am scolding them or shouting at them instead of jamming with them, then some people are likely to say yes, 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 especially if they are far more junior employees who do not feel empowered. And it can actually turn out that they become resentful or upset because immediately, if you experience something as negative, your brain gets hijacked by your emotions and you can't think straight. And then you cannot deliver a rational message to somebody who's emotional. So then your influence is zero. So, just from our own lessons learned, I think it's important to understand how body language and tone of voice can come across very differently to how you intended to be, Lindy.
So I think before
Sorry,
we delve into the solutions there, for many of us, many of us perhaps don't even know whether we are dealing with a disengaged workforce or not. So what are those telltale signs where we can see, okay, there's a problem here and we need to jump in?
Okay, so it's basic. It's lack of initiative, somebody who's really just not interested, low employee morale, especially if people experience a behavior change. As the line manager, you need to find out, are you okay? How can I support you? Maybe just have a coffee chat with someone. Take them out for a walk around the building. I can see that you are not yourself. Is there anything I can do to assist? Try and open up. Sometimes it's a problem at home, but often you'll find that the person withdraws from work. Assignments are not done at all or are not done on time. The quality of the work is really bad. So for me, the bad thing about those telltales, and it's contagious, negative energy spreads 6 times faster than positive energy. So, and positive energy, if it comes from me or from you onto someone else, is a very short-term motivator. People do become energetic if they hear brilliant speakers, and they will be on a roll, and then their personality takes over, or it becomes too hard, whatever they had energy for. So, but the problem with that is that individual doesn't only affect himself, he infects the entire team. It has a massive cascading effect down on overall productivity and also on the bottom line. And it detracts. Yeah. Christine, I don't know if you had something to
Sorry.
add there.
Yes. I think one of the things that is becoming more prevalent today is silent resistance. So
Yes.
people don't say anything, but they literally just stop working, or they do the minimum work that is required. So their own passion, their own contribution, their own innovation, they just say, you know what? I'm not valued. Therefore, I'm not going to give anything else. I have a family at
Yes.
home, or I have friends, and I would rather spend my energy there. So I'm still working for you, but because I don't feel valued, I don't even want to get into a conversation with you. I just
Yes.
withdraw.
Can
No,
I
it
jump in?
sounds
Sorry.
sorry, Elsabe, it sounds to me like this is a kind of issue where you don't first wait to see, okay, there's a problem and let's fix it. It's actually the kind of thing where you need to be focused on in any way, building those relationships, making sure the communication channels are open so that
Yes.
there isn't a problem in the first place that you then have to go and reverse back and try and fix.
Yes, absolutely. Um, Linking it, what you've just mentioned now back to what Christine said, and I think we'll get to it shortly, but also bringing me back to that previous comment that I made, Christine, just to illustrate your point. If I don't understand the value that I bring, and if I don't understand where is my team going, where do we fit in the purpose of this company in the bigger whole, then often you'll find that people withdraw. And they don't, perhaps they don't mean to, but it becomes a negative self-talk where this person says to him, I'm feeling worthless, I'm feeling it's meaningless, everything I do gets questioned, I'm not good enough. And then they project it back to the line manager, not because the line manager told him so, because of your brain gets hijacked. Remember, your frontal lobe is where your behavior sits. Rational decision making cannot happen if your brain gets hijacked. And I'm sitting at the moment with a change program that I'm busy with, where one of my key contributors is falling out by the wayside. And I've investigated this problem, and I've realized they are so uncertain about their role in this new change program, and they need extra validation and extra motivation. And it's hard to influence that person. And then you might find a problem situation where this person isn't willing, they don't have a proper perspective of themselves. Self-awareness is low. So the more you try and coach them and guide them into the theory of what their role is and how to approach it, the less certain they become. So you've got to work very, very hard on that relationship, Lindi.
So let's get into what the basics are that a line manager can do to ensure better engagement.
Okay, so it's basically, so the very basics is recognize your team and show appreciation, but you have to be authentic. If you're an A-type personality and you're always in a rush, force yourself to make time and take, my recommendation is, and I'm one of those hurried people, go out of the office situation, take your team and go and sit outside on the bench and just chat to them, recognize and appreciate them, because even if you mean it sincerely, you pull your team together. Hi guys, I just want to say rah rah, I really appreciate you, this event was fantastic. They might experience it as a by the way comment. So if you want a different result, you've got to do things differently. And that's a very hard lesson I learned. Take them outside of that situation. You don't have to take them to lunch. You don't have to, but try and slow yourself down and make that heart connection with them, outside of where your brain is rushing to the next job, and spend, even if it's just 15 minutes with them, showing appreciation. Also, trust your staff. Give them if you bank trust in your staff. If I come to you and I say, Lindi, I've got this massive task, please can you help me with it? This is what I want you to do. Here are some resources to support you. Are you willing to give it a go? And you establish the framework within Lindi's going to operate. Usually if you put somebody on a higher pedestal, that's where they will function. And believe me, I've made that mistake where I want to micromanage and fix every single little thing. So you've got to understand that people want to self-lead. And I'll speak about that a little bit later. But for me, possibly one of the most important things that you have to do is always first sell the vision. Give people that shared sense of purpose, that everybody understands what success is going to look like. This project we're doing today will be successful if. Everybody's got to understand what success looks like, and then the individuals have got to understand their role. Also, we have already said prioritize regular communication that flows down and up, but part of strong communication is to listen. And I know, Christine, you've got quite a few things to say about listening, and you're a remarkable listener. And we've been working closely lately, and it bowls me over. And Lindi, you told me recently that your listening skills is something that you are busy refining, and I've picked it up. You take it next level. I can only tell the both of you how I feel, how I feel when I'm in conversation with you. I feel valued. I feel you see me, and I feel that I can add something, and it makes me feel good about myself. And that is a skill that I'm also now working on, because I mean, if it makes me feel so good, then surely it's something that I have to adopt myself. Then just other than that is try and take an active interest in the person, not just the job, but also who they are as a human being. Just be very careful. If you're a high-performing individual, you are likely to find yourself first, perhaps, maybe you start your daily meeting, or if you work remotely or hybrid, most of us would probably have a startup meeting every morning of, say, 20 minutes with our team. Just be careful, high-performing line manager. If you are that high-performing line manager, not everybody has the ability to immediately switch over from high-performance mindset into friendly, how are you? Many less experienced people would start off with a hello, friendly, how are you, kumbaya, now we're all friends. And then when you start the work conversation and you're tough and you start asking about deadlines, and then you're experienced as insincere. You didn't mean it when you asked me how my child was, because now you're being strict about a deadline that I didn't achieve. So just for high performing leaders and individuals, just watch out for that, because staff can misinterpret that, and just be aware of it. Yeah.
So it sounds to me, for me, there's a bit of good news and bad news over here. The bad news is that this is not
Yes.
a quick tick the boxes exercise. This is
No.
really about forcing yourself to slow down and really, really connect on a sincere level with the people around you. And that means that you actually
Yes.
have to, there has to be care for them. And the way you care for
Yes.
people is by listening to them. And the more you get to know people, generally, the more you will care for them. And in that regard, it is good news because it does foster a greater sense of community, and you will reap the rewards, not only from a productivity point of view, but
Yes.
people who have better connections with the people around them actually live longer. It's been proven to bring down
I know.
blood
I'm going
pressures
to
and
die young because
improves heart health
I
if
need
we
to
have good
social a bit
connections.
more.
But yes, it is not a quick fix.
Yeah.
But I do just want to get back to the issue of clarity of task and the theory of self-determination. Can you just unpack that a bit more for us,
Yes.
please, Elsabe?
Okay. So engagement basically has three core drivers. The first, and it's all linked to clarity of task. The first driver is autonomy. Every single person wants to have a say, particularly if it's about their job. And so many of us think that because we are the line manager, we have to know everything about everyone. Personally, what I like doing, and it doesn't work for everybody, but I like to employ or surround myself with subject matter experts and people with skills that are better than mine. And I then see myself as a central hub that brings all of that together and allows everybody to flourish. Obviously, this very much depends on the business model. Some companies would structure their communication department where every communication practitioner has, you've got one business unit that you look after and you've got to do everything. And for me, that is a little bit problematic because if people function in their strengths, then they do better and they are more fulfilled. And then they have a more clarity of their task. And you'll find in this kind of structure that in some businesses, you'll find the eventing is very, very good, but the professional side on engagement and that is low. In other places, you'll find the engagement and the support to the divisional heads is very high, but the eventing is poor. It's because one communication practitioner gets expected to be a master of everything. And we could end up, especially if you are more junior or if you have a line manager in communication who has a certain preference and doesn't move out of that preference, then you find that autonomy is also very low. So people want to have a say. If I want to change a policy in my company, then that policy has a higher likelihood, they say 22 times higher, to be successful, the change, than what if I consult with that subject matter expert. Say, for example, we decide we want to buy new cleaning materials for our cleaning staff because our current cleaning materials are too expensive. Then usually what would happen is procurement will get 3 quotes and they'll buy the cheapest plonk ever. But had they spoken to the staff in charge of cleaning, that lady might have told you, listen, at home, I only use vinegar and bicarbonate of soda. And it disinfects everything and everything is sparkling clean and you're going to cut 80% of your cleaning cost. But now we don't ask. There's no autonomy for her. She gets a whole bunch of product to work with, no explanation how the product works. Have you seen, if you drive around in town, people put car polish on their cars, and especially the younger guys with the hot rod cars, and then they drive around with that car for days, and it seems to be a bit of a status symbol. Have you ever tried getting that polish off? It's like putty. It's like glue. So autonomy is incredibly important. Ask me. It will give me a sense of purpose and value and that I can contribute and that I truly am the expert of cleaning this facility. The second driver of engagement is team, a sense of belonging, feeling that I'm part of something bigger, working to something greater than where I am. And in change management, Christine, I think everything a communicator does in this day and age is a form of change management. I don't know if you'll agree with me.
Absolutely.
So if you remember, we started off and we said, sell the vision. This is where you sell that vision of, yes, you are one person, but you are part of a collective team. You are the expert at what you do. Nobody can replace you. I wish we could see our employees just a little bit different. Sometimes we
I
see...
think it's such an important point you make, Elsabe, because we employ people to do a job, to be an expert, whether it is a cleaner, whether it is a line manager, whether it is a mechanic. It doesn't matter what level they are. We employ them as the expert in that specific field, but then we don't trust them
Absolutely
to make decisions or to provide us with any feedback.
And have you seen? Go and look at most of the companies at the sign-off limits. Most people do not have authority to sign off 10 Rand to make a decision about, today we're buying this milk or that milk in their job. And that comes with trust. And allowing me some autonomy comes with trust. And what does trust drive? Trust drives engagement. And there's no way I'm going to influence you if you don't feel trusted. It's a hard lesson to learn for us all. I've been there. I've made the mistakes. It seems like I learn all my life lessons the very hard way. But yeah, we have to be self-aware and we have to be aware of the people around us. But then the third driver of engagement is, what is the third driver of engagement? Sense of purpose, linked back to skill. So if you don't acknowledge my skill, my competency, then you are affecting my self-confidence and my mental state in which I go to work and perform my task. So capability is key. If you think I'm not capable, what do you base that on? How do you have that discussion with me? Sometimes you hear an employee say, yeah, in this place, you are only as good as your last mistake. That is so sad. Somewhere you have to get to a point where you recognize that John did 9 out of the 10 things right. Maybe he dropped the ball on this one big, very important thing. But what is our corporate culture? What does our corporate culture say? I bet you the majority, well, every single one of my clients, innovation is important to them and resilience is important to them. Yet the minute somebody makes a mistake, you want to wipe them off the face of the earth. How do we as line managers deal with mistakes and issues like that? So if you deal with me in a way that makes me feel I'm incompetent, I don't grow the confidence, I don't trust myself. And if you and I don't have a very good relationship, I'm not going to trust you and I'm not going to influence you. I have in the past in team meetings, like with my team, I have said, Joe, thank you very much for doing this, but I think you could have done it this way. It would have been better. That is a huge issue because the person I'm speaking to might not see it as a learning opportunity for the whole team. He might think that I'm criticizing him in front of everyone. Had I known him better, had I been more self-aware, I might not have made that mistake and his competency would have been healthy. And that sense of, it's just a mistake, but this is how I'm going to fix it, could take over. So that is the theory of self-determination, Lindi.
Thanks, Elsabe. So I want to get into now the head, heart, and hands model, which is the bigger theme of the webinar today. Christine, can you unpack that a bit for us? What exactly is that model, and how can we employ that to solve disengagement?
Thank you, Lindi. So head, heart, and hand is being used everywhere, in corporates, in community development, because it's such a simple, basic element of communication. Okay, so head, what is the thinking? What is the intellectual capacity? What is the brain activity that goes into communicating, into doing my work, into trying to be engaged? The heart is your feelings or your emotions. What is the passion that I have to get a message across? And the hands is the action. It's the doing part. So what we say is, whenever you communicate or you formulate a message, you need to ensure that there's a head message, that there's a heart message, and there's a hand message in that one single message. Because we also need to remember that we talk to a lot of people, and everybody have a different way of communicating, and everybody has a different way of receiving information. And what we tend to do is, if I am a certain, or if I have a certain preference, for example, I like facts and figures, that's the only way that I tend to communicate with any person in front of me.
Yes.
But now, for those people that have a heart, they just disengage. And for those people that need something actionable or tactical that they have to do, they disengage. So we need to make sure whatever we do, we have all of those elements in one single message. It's, for example, we also need to remember that some people learn and take in information when they see it, when they physically read it. Some people need a visual representation like an infographic or picture. Some people need auditory input. So
Not my
they
kids.
only hear.
Not my
Not your kids.
My kids, yes, but not my grandchildren. They are not the blompotta.
And then finally, there's people that can only get information when they physically do something, when there's a tactical or a kinesthetic thing attached to it. And messages needs to be delivered in 3 different ways, through 3 different channels,
Yes.
more than 7 times. So 3 different ways, through 3 different communication channels, more than 7 times before it's going to land. Because we need to see and hear and experience a certain message more than 7 times before we start recognizing it.
Yes.
So that doesn't mean that we're going to act on it. And that's why the heads and the heart and the hand is so important. Because if I talk to your mind or your brain, if I talk to your heart, if I talk to your hands, then I make sure that I have all of those elements that then leads to engaged employees and not disengaged employees.
I must be honest, that sounds complicated.
But just
That's
hang
not.
on. Ask us, we'll help you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and it's an interesting figures that you are mentioning, because I know they say a person needs on average to see an advertisement 8 times before it actually sinks in. And I think, I mean, we can, I'm sure we can all relate, whether it's friends or husbands or spouses, having to repeat messaging.
Into the trash
they'll say,
can
"But
like
I
50
already
times.
told you, you weren't listening."
Yes.
And it's like that in the workplace too, because we're so inundated with messaging, we do need to get a repeat. So does that mean, so we have to be cognizant to constantly make sure what the message is and then repackage it in different ways. And I mean, how does that speak to communication fatigue? I mean, aren't we already too inundated with messages to still have to receive the same thing over and over? Or is it actually helping people by giving them that same messaging in a different way to help them absorb it better?
So I facilitated the role of communication during change management workshop yesterday and the day before. And it was interesting because communication fatigue with the participants there was a higher occurrence than than there was change fatigue. And you have to take into account that one of the organizations that were there is currently running 26 different change projects. So their poor employees just going Okay.
Wow.
But yes, there is change fatigue and there is communication fatigue. But that's why, as a line manager or as a communicator, you need to know who you are talking to, who is your audience, and what is their communication preferences. So even if I have it in 7 different channels, so I have screensavers, I have ticket tapes, I have WhatsApp, I have polls, I have posters, as an individual, you are only going to relate to 1 or maybe maximum 2 of those channels where you are going to get the information. So it's hard work for you as the communicator, because you need to make sure that you cover all your bases for the heads, the hearts, and the hands, but also for the auditory, the vocal, the kinesthetic, because as a receiver of the message, I'm only going to read and make it mine if it's on WhatsApp, for example, or if it is on a poster.
I'm
I
not
know
going to
that if
check
we
all
do
22 the channels. Yeah.
definitely not. If we do surveys, it's interesting that emails always ranks as the most used communication channel, which is the truth, but it's not the most effective communication channel.
Yeah.
So once again, know your audience and know the culture of your organization. So if you are allowed to have fun and to make it a bit wonky and do activations, that's the way that you will communicate. But if you're more in a, and I'm going to use it, so if there's any people in that field, my apologies, but if you're in an engineering field or in a finance field, it seems to be a lot more structured and rigid. So that's when you will go more towards your emails. But yes, communication fatigue, unfortunately, is a reality. And that's why we're trying to simplify it with photos, with pictures, so that at a glance, I can see what the message is, and you're not sending me an email that's going to take me 2 or 5 minutes to read through.
Lindi,
It sounds to me like, as you know, because of communication fatigue, we're actually in an era where we need that much more focus on communication strategies and that much more effort put into communication strategies, because otherwise it really is a waste.
Yes.
I think perhaps a few years ago it was a lot easier, but now you really have to make sure that every word counts and every image counts to get the best bang for your buck out of that strategy.
So I want to jump in here. Sorry, Christine, I just want to support what you both said. I'm busy running a poll at the moment. It closes next week, Friday, and it's in Africa and North America, because my clients, that's where most of my clients, well, they all are. And what I checked how it's going, and I am totally shocked. 5,300 participants to date. 92% say, I am inundated with information. Please, I don't want any more. No more. It's too much. I can't cope. 87% of them say, but send me more information that's relevant to me. So almost everybody says, I'm totally snowed. Yes, and this return to all. If you get an email and you reply to everyone, it drives me insane. And that's typically how we snow people under with information overflow. That's like what you said. Both of you said it. Know who I want to say what to, and say it to that person. Which group needs to know? Don't have just one group and everybody gets everything. That's when people feel I'm snowed under. And oh yes, 56% of them say, I delete all emails from head office because it's not important. So, and then we wonder why people, can I tell you what happened? They lost trust. They lost trust. And what I've also picked up, the majority of those companies don't have a traffic controller, a central point to disseminate information. So it's critical that we have a central person or group who's responsible for distributing online content, and there must be rules. in a factory, John lost his keys. You can't send that to everybody because the guy sitting in the control room, keeping his eye on the machine and productivity, now has to be interrupted by John lost his keys. If you found them, take them to the Snoopy at 5 o'clock this afternoon. Major issues, yes.
Yeah,
Lindi,
yeah,
sorry,
I think
but
it's very important
I
not to.
can,
Sorry,
sorry,
Christine,
Lindi,
continue.
if I can draw Elsabe's results back to the heads, the hearts, and the hand, what we tend to find more and more these days is that once we do a survey, which talks to the brain, which is your logical facts and data, we get a certain result. If
Yes.
we follow that up with a focus groups, which now talks to the heart and your
Yes.
emotion and your passion, we get the direct opposite. So
Yep.
it's as if when we send out a survey, we know that the organization expects a certain answer, therefore I tick all the correct boxes. But if you engage with their heart, you get the real answer, the real emotion. And that's why it's important to have the heads and the hearts and the hands to always balance it out and to use it as a check and a balance to make sure that your communication is on track.
So once you start implementing these policies and you start implementing the head, heart, and hands model, how long does it take before you actually start seeing change, and what does that change look like?
Okay. So immediate change is when you have recognition in place, when you tell someone, well done. And I want to add to what Elsabe said here earlier. Saying well done in a group is like it is expected communication. If we did well, then you have to say, well done. But it's only appreciated if I say, Lindi, I would like to thank you for coming in half an hour earlier today to help me with this
Specific.
report. I really appreciate it. You need to be specific.
Yes.
So when
Nice.
recognition
Yeah.
is given in that way, then it is immediate. And you also see that the increased participation is an immediate effect. Your medium term, so in other words, after a 3 to a 6 month period, that's only when you start seeing that there's a behavioral change. Because I need to test first to see what your reaction is going to be, and then I will start changing my behavior. And your long-term effect, so that would be 6 to 12 months, is only when you say, okay, now we are working together, we are collaborating, we are not being hit with a stick if we do something else, and now we can come up with innovative ideas. So depending on what you want to change, it's going to take anything from an immediate reaction, a week or two, up to a year.
So I just quickly want to get into the why, because I think a lot of times communication is seen as one of those things that's sort of a nice to have, but not really necessary. What is effective communication and an engaged workforce actually mean for a company? Is it really going to bring me more money in the bank at the end of the day? Because that's what I'm after as a business owner. I want more money
Yes.
in the bank.
Absolutely. And an engaged workforce directly links to business impact and to business profit. Because if I have an engaged workforce, then they know what they have to do. They know what is expected in their role. They know how they contribute to the bigger picture. But if you talk about the heart, they also know how they contribute to the bigger community or to the bigger society. And once people understand why they are there, they're willing to now give more. Now I add recognition to it and the fact that you can innovate and I reward you for it. So now I do a bit extra. And all of those bits and bits and bits of extra ultimately means that I have better productivity, I have innovation that makes life easier, or I can do work faster, and that translates directly to the bottom line in terms of rands and cents.
Can I add 2 examples?
Please.
I think it was 3 years ago, I worked on a project which at the time I didn't realize was a change project. The company's EBITDA dropped by 50% before COVID in 2019. After COVID, more. And the company was facing closing of huge manufacturing plants, retrenchments, unless they could do something. They already had massive profit improvement plans in place, which most corporates do. So how do you ask? Oh, yes. And the latest engagement survey showed that employee morale was at a historic all-time low, and trust in senior leadership was low, the lowest since they started doing these engagement surveys. So now how do you go to employees who say, I don't trust leadership decisions? That's why we can't have salary increases. That's why they're closing. That's why we have to take commercial downtime. And some of the plants, staff had already started working, reduced working hours with reduced pay. We had to donate leave to help pull those families through who was earning a reduced income. So the challenge was to get the staff on board. They had to come up with cost-saving projects. They had to come up with new innovations. Guess what?
It's that collaboration.
Yes. So the target was 500 million rand every year for 5 years. In 5 years' time, we had to regain 2.5 billion. Guess what our achievement was in the first 10 months? Not 500 million, 1.41 billion.
Wow.
And when I did the survey, I can't remember the exact, it was high, it was in the 80s percentage of people who said, I'm so proud of this company and I commit myself, I'm committed to play my part to help us make it. And guess what? They made it. Similar to that, we had a safety program, which we introduced in this company who had 13,000 people working with and for this company, 10,000 semi-literate laborers who work in a very dangerous environment, and something like 6 fatalities in I can't remember the exact frame, I think it was 2 years, implemented the communication program or the change program, took fatalities in that audience to 0. That
Wow.
and that was within the first year. So that shows you, Lindi, what you can do and how quickly it can happen if you follow the right process.
I can imagine,
Yes.
I mean,
And
even
if
just your
people feel
staff
that they're part of
turnover.
it.
Sorry, Christine?
Sorry, and people need to feel part of a team. If they are talked to, then they disengage. If I'm part of the solution, I'm willing to engage.
Yeah, and I think with staff turnovers, I mean, you're going to have a far lower staff turnover if you've got employees that are happy working for a company, because, you know, we all know that thing about, you know, you're willing to go an extra mile for somebody that you like. And it goes the same as a company. If you're happy in the company, if you trust the company, you'll be willing to stay there that much longer, which means your turnover rate is lower, and the costs that it costs every time to get in a new employee and train them is so much lower. So we are going to start wrapping up now. I want to see if there are any questions from the floor, from any of our participants. If something has come up that you're perhaps wondering about, you've got unprecedented access to I can actually say global experts, because they are both internationally award-winning communications strategies. So I see there are hands up. But can you potentially write your question in the Q&A box, and then we can take it from there? Just going to give a few seconds for those questions to come through.
Sorry, Lindi,
yes.
Maybe whilst we are waiting, Simon Sinek has a beautiful example and a saying where he says, if you want to communicate with someone and you greet them in the morning, you stop, You look them in the eye, you ask them how they're doing, you wait for the answer, and then you move on. Because we tend to, especially if it's in a work environment, just walk past each other and, hi, how are you? You know, sort of looking around and hoping that the person is going to answer you. That drives disengagement. When you stop, you look someone in the eye, you listen and you ask and you wait, then it actually drives engagement.
Yes. No, absolutely. And for me, a key thing here is just that how important the sincerity part is. And I think it really forces a lot of us, because we've become so sort of boxed into our own worlds nowadays, because things have become so incredibly busy, or perhaps we are working remotely, that take the time to connect with people anymore. And I think that it creates problems on a much bigger level, not just in companies, but in societies as well. So yes, taking the time to actually connect with people can solve a lot of problems.
Lindi,
Yes.
sorry, I just want to jump in there. Everybody's microphones and their cameras are unmuted. So anyone, maybe we should ask people who want to ask a question or say something to just put their cameras on, switch on your camera and your mic, and then they can maybe join the conversation if you want to take it from there.
Okay, I'm just, so while we're waiting for that, I'm quickly going to just deal with Robert's question. And Robert, I must say that that thought popped into my mind as well, because it's something that I struggle with. How do we transition from that comment towards, how was your weekend, how's your children, to when's that, your past deadline, when's that work coming in, buddy? How do we do that without sounding insincere or negating the connection that we just try to establish with them?
So I think if you ask and you're interested and you do it every single time, that establishes that you are sincere, that's your way of life.
Yes.
But people understand that you are at work. So I can ask, hi, Elsabe, how was your weekend? And she tells me about her beautiful grandchildren. And then I can say, okay, so, I'm a bit concerned because you said that you would get that email to me yesterday at 11. And at 5, I still didn't have it. So the implication is that I couldn't prepare for my report that I had to submit. Can I please ask you in future, when I say 11, I actually need it at 11. And if you can't make it, let me know. So it's the way you say it. It's the tone. It is showing them what the implication is of not doing something and not just going, you know what, you're an absolute, because you didn't give it to me and now I'm in the, okay. So it's the way you say it and it's the tone.
Also, I think there are so many leadership styles. My leadership style is very different. I want to have a consistent relationship with my direct report. I want that person to know me. So if I now suddenly hamburger everything, then people are going to start looking at me with distrust. So I don't hamburger. I would directly go in, especially when the heat's on. I would say, hi, Alpha. Hi, Christine. It's Elsabe. Hello, Elsabe. How are you? Yeah, I'm fine. Listen, sorry. Excuse me. I'm in a bit of a hurry. Can you please quickly help me? The report. I didn't receive it. It's urgent. Are you going to be able to send it to me, or did I just overlook it? So in that scenario, I probably wouldn't ask them how they are and how their kids are. But you've got to be very careful of your tone of voice. So I'm a hurried person. And unfortunately, in my previous life, when I was formerly employed, I was asked to present telephone etiquette. And I was so excited because that was my role. And I arrived at the training course and the people were sitting arms crossed, but eventually I could see they were all angry at me, and I didn't know why, because I'm such a nice person and I'm so excited and I'm so looking forward to it. And then the one person who also happened to be friendly with me said, eventually I couldn't stand it anymore because I was clearly not landing. She said, how can you teach us about telephone etiquette if you have no telephone etiquette? You're the last person who could possibly present the subject. So you have to be very self-aware. So, but if you are consistent, if you are a person who focuses on work only, and that is your introduction, be consistent. Because if I now started, oh, Christina, I like your eyes and your shirt is beautiful, and how's that baby doing? And then she chats to me, she might think, oh, this person has a heart. And the next moment I'll say, yes, but where's my report? You know, so
there's a time and place for everything.
Yes. Also, so just stay true to who you are. And if you do have to soften the blow, do. But yeah, I think we have to, as leaders, we have to be self-aware.
So I just want to mention, I see there are some people having problem with the Q&A function, but the meeting chat is working. So if you've got questions there, and if anybody does want to unmute themselves and put up their hands for a question, you're welcome to do so. I just wanted to ask another question. How big an influence does graphics play? Because from a for me, that's in a communications position. Within my company, I use a graphic designer not very often, but I have realized that sometimes a good graphic actually has a far better way of landing a good message. And how important is that you work with those kind of experts? And instead of just sending out a plainly worded email, to actually make sure you have engaging graphics. Does that play any role in how a message is absorbed?
I'm going to go back to my answer of some people need to read it, some people need to have a visual, some people need to hear it, some people need to actually do something. And graphics is really great because at a glance, I can see what the message is. It takes me 5 seconds to interpret versus reading 2 minutes in an email. Email is great if you want a call to action to say, please submit, do this, do that, and the following. But if it's about awareness, then a graphic is the best possible way to go.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to read Temba's comment here. There isn't a question, but it is a comment where he says he's noticed the generational difference in workplace interactions. The older generations tend to be more open to sharing personal aspects of their lives with co-workers, where in contrast, younger generations often feel that such inquiries are intrusive and prefer to keep their personal lives separate from their professional environment. And I just want to add to that as well, because I think it's along the same lines in terms of what Elsabe was saying about phone call etiquette. I think people are all so different. For me, I don't like a chit chat over a phone. For me, if you phone me, I want you to tell me immediately what it is you want, how can I help you, and when do you want it? Same with the email. I also struggle with the hope you are keeping well line. I feel if I don't put it there, I'm being rude, but if I put it there, it also feels very forced. So how do we navigate these different personalities and these different, also the generational gaps in terms of making sure that we aren't being intrusive, we aren't trying to force ourselves onto somebody, but we're also creating rapport?
So there, I want to jump back to your values. Do you know how many people don't understand their company's values and don't even know the company values? So the company values should not be words on a poster somewhere. You as a team should take those values and interpret them for you as a team, because I can't zoom in every single time on Susie, who's 19 years old, who doesn't like to talk about her private life, or John, who doesn't this, or Mary, who doesn't that. As a team, we have to get together and decide what does two-way communication mean to us? What does honesty and openness mean to us? It doesn't mean I have to explain to you in great depth where they had to remove that fraaitjie, the wart, yesterday when I went and they cut 2 centimeters into my wherever part. So we have to collectively agree. If they say innovation is a value, How do we as a team see it? And what are our rules of engagement? If we say respect, do you know how many companies have respect as a value? And yet, as you mentioned now, I think the gentleman is Temba. Temba's idea of what respect means might be different to mine. And you can't force your own ideas on people, not even if you're the CEO. It has to be a collective understanding, which has to align with the company position. That is how you bridge that problem.
Okay. Yes, I think what I'm hearing is that it is important to have that self-awareness, as you mentioned right in the beginning,
Yeah.
Elsabe. We all need to be aware of our tone, what we're saying, how we're coming across, and be prepared to take a step back and be a bit critical about how we are. And that's not just us as communication practitioners, but we need to encourage that in the workplace as well, because it doesn't help it's all coming from one channel. But when the communication practitioner is left, then myself and my colleague have got no respect for each other. So it really just is about looking towards the people around you and understanding. And I think you need to have a little bit of a feeling also. I mean, if I ask you, how was your weekend? And you tell me it was fine, and then you break eye contact, then I must realize it's probably not something you want to talk about and leave it there, or perhaps work on building the relationship and then see.
Yes.
But if you're going to give me an essay about how your weekend was, then I can obviously, that's something that's important to you to discuss, and then somehow try and manage that it doesn't derail my whole morning.
Yeah.
But yes, it is important to understand that different things are important for different people. So I do just want to I want to wrap up at this point. I think it's been incredibly informative. Thank you so much. I've really learned a lot. I'm definitely going to use this recording now just to go back and make some notes for myself when dealing with my own clients. And then I just want to just summarize the main points that I got as a takeaway from the session. And the first thing is to really have that sincerity to want to connect with people, to want to bring about that change. There needs to be a real desire to do that and an interest in the workforce. It can't just come from a ticking the boxes point of view. And in that regard, communication has become more complicated than ever. We are so inundated with messages that it has become absolutely vital that we streamline our communication campaigns, know exactly what it is we want to communicate, how we're going to communicate it, and make sure that we touch on the heart, hand, and head. Something that's audiovisual, something that's auditory, and something that really speaks to everybody, to make sure that our messages do land and that we show value. And at the end of the day, communication is a vital point in making sure that the business reaches a good bottom line, that they continue to make a profit, that they remain viable with low staff turnovers, and a continued success rate. So it's not something just to be quickly hurried and send out in an email and have a quick kumbaya moment in the morning, and then it's not pulled through to the rest of the business. So I really hope everybody that tuned in today can take something away from this, and that you will be employing these communication strategies more thoughtfully and more thoroughly. And of course, if you do need any assistance with that, we do have our two world-class experts on hand, Christine and Elsabe, who can help you clarify your communication strategies and put something in place that's really going to be effective and make a difference to the sustainability of your company.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you. With that, we will close off. Thank you very much, and to everybody, and enjoy your Fridays and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you. Thank you, Lindi. Thank you, Christine.
Sorry, Lindi, can I just add one thing? There's a few people on here that is in the process of writing or preparing for the CMP and SCMP exam. Please note that this session will also count towards the hours that you need for your accreditation.
That is the communication certification with the Global Communication Council, ne, Christine?
Yes, that's the
And
one.
if you are not a member of the International Association for Business Communicators, join us.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Lindi.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.